Listener discretion is advised.
I definitely spent more time on this case than any other.
Oh,
Then
great.
you spent Googling whether bathtubs are made out of teeth.
That is pretty much neck and neck. But anyway.
Jury's still out, people. Wake up, sheeple.
No, it's not.
Wake up, sheeple.
Well, the
Tooth enamel
4-year-old
and
girl who
bathtub enamel
also
are the
Googled
same.
it.
Are people.
Soylent
All right.
Green.
So for most
Soylent
sheeple,
clean.
Kentucky is probably much more likely to bring to mind stories of bootlegging than marijuana farming.
Oh.
But Barron County has very good soil.
But the state, and in particular the area of Marion County,
Oh, Madam Librarian County.
Marion.
Madam Librarian.
I made Zach watch The Music Man not that long ago. He had never seen it, and he was
With a
like,
capital T and that rhymes with P and it stands for pool.
P and that stands for pool.
It's one of my favorite musicals.
It's the best.
It's
All right.
so
A little
good.
talk, a little big,
So-
a little talk, a little big. Sorry.
Okay. Beep, 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 ba-da-da-ba-da-da-da.
One
So-
Grecian herb.
That is Lucy.
We need to do a rewatch. It won't hold up. Warning.
Okay, so Marion County, Kentucky has a lengthy history in both illicit industries of bootlegging and marijuana farming. So Marion County, located in basically the exact center of the state, was one of the most prolific and well-known producers of moonshine back in the day. The infamous gangster John Dillinger even hid out for a time in Gravel Switch, Kentucky, which is located in Marion County.
Check
Maybe
out
this
my
is
gravel
why-
switch.
Like NASCAR is kind of big
Oh,
in
maybe.
Kentucky, right? 'Cause
Sure.
it has its roots in
Rum running.
running.
It could be. I mean, basically, people just were like very into moonshining and bootlegging and like not fucking snitching on anybody. And we will get to it.
You also have all those mountains and all those rolling hills and
So many
forests. You
caves
can
and crevasses.
You can hide.
You can hide out. And it's very rural, and people are just like gonna help their
Bored.
neighbor and not
right.
gonna fucking help the feds.
Mm-hmm. There are no snitches.
No snitches in Gravel Switch.
Mm.
So, even when Prohibition finally ended, restrictive alcohol sale laws were not entirely repealed in Kentucky, leaving the state as a patchwork of wet and dry counties and ensuring that there was like a continuing market for moonshine. And it's
Yeah, that's not complex at all.
A patchwork of wet and dry counties is probably not that effective.
not very effective for buying alcohol, but it is like effective for allowing moonshiners to still market their product.
Oh, yeah. And especially like you said, there's so many counties. So they're probably very small counties. So like a literal checkerboard of this wet and dry.
Yeah.
Like you just go a couple miles down the road and get what you need.
Exactly. But also there's like evidence that the moonshiners wanted their counties to be dry counties because if like legal liquor stores opened up, they wouldn't be
they're
able
out
to
of
sell
business.
their moonshine.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Supply
Oh,
and
yeah.
demand. Oh, yeah.
So then, about a decade after the repeal of the 18th Amendment, the United States federal government began subsidizing the growing of hemp on numerous Kentucky farms. And that is because the fiber from hemp was used in World War II to manufacture ropes and lines for the U.S. Navy.
Oh, yeah.
Because hemp is actually extremely useful.
And durable.
Yeah. And sustainable because it grows really fast. So this policy was referred to as Hemp for Victory. And for the duration of World War II, it made marijuana not only legal, but highly encouraged as a crop for farmers to cultivate.
During World War II?
Yep.
Wow.
Listen, marijuana was not federally made illegal until like in our parents' lifetime.
Like there was like a push in the 30s and then they were like, wait, never mind, backtrack, we need the hemp. And then in the 50s after the war, they were like, never mind, people are getting high off this, crack down.
Yeah, never mind, we can put black people in prison for this.
Right.
Let's make it illegal.
Right.
It's profitable.
Black people and Latino people.
Yep.
So hemp and marijuana are both derived from the same plant species. They just contain different THC content. And so hemp seeds contain very, very little THC, whereas other parts of the plant contain higher levels of THC, which is what gets you high.
Like the flower and the bud.
And the bud and the stem. And I don't know anything about pot, so I had to Google that.
Stem. That's why you take the stems
I
out.
don't know, because I don't care. So anyway.
Because I buy good weed that doesn't have seeds or stems.
I've actually never even bought weed. I know so little about it. Like, I smoke it when it is given to me. I've never bought it.
Oh, I have a quick anecdote.
Oh my God.
So I'm not going to name any specifics, but I was asked to drive a coworker home. And I'll just say we worked in a restaurant together.
I was going to say, you
And
only
he
have
worked in the
two
kitchen
coworkers.
and I was a bartender.
And they're on this call right now. So this is going to be easy
This
to
was a
figure out who it
long
is.
time ago.
Past
Okay.
coworker.
This was a past life, long time ago. And we get to his house and he's like, oh, come in and like we can smoke like as a thank you for driving me home, whatever. I was like, okay.
You're like, I have to drive home, but okay.
Well, I lived very, very close. But I'm not justifying anything. I was very young, very stupid, and actually didn't end up smoking, which I will explain this anyway. So he comes inside and he hands me a Frisbee full of like really bad weed. And he's like, here, just break this up. I'm going to go change my clothes quick. And I was like,
Okay.
what does that mean? And he was like, just pick out like the seeds and the stems. And I was like, oh, okay. Obvious to the eye. What is the stem and what is the seed? And he's like, I'll just fucking do it. It was like, on second thought, this is very foreign to me. This specific shitty weed. So I'm just gonna go home. I'm good actually.
I'm out.
Yeah.
Like,
I just had
didn't
no
know.
desire to like learn about it, and people who knew a lot about it were really annoying and like
very annoying
and like show offy about it. So I just opted out.
yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
okay, so Kentucky was tasked with growing hemp for the war effort in order to provide seeds to the government, which could then be cultivated in territories with more favorable year-round growing conditions, such as Hawaii. So they were mainly there to like get the seeds.
Get it started
Going.
and then it gets sent somewhere else. Yeah.
So in 1942, the U.S. government asked Marion County to produce enough seed for 500,000 acres of hemp.
Dang.
Roughly enough for 453,750 football fields of marijuana plants.
That's
a
an
lot of
awful lot. That's
weed.
like bigger than Kentucky.
500,000 football fields of pot.
I don't like that.
At the time, marijuana had not really caught on in the U.S. as a recreational drug to the extent that it later would, especially in Kentucky, where alcohol was still the intoxicant of choice. So a lot of like regular folks, especially rural folks, weren't smoking weed yet. It wasn't common. In fact, many farmers in Kentucky only learned of marijuana's effects accidentally.
Oh, love that.
After harvesting the hemp crop, they would use a thresher to separate the parts of the plant the U.S. government wanted, which was the seeds, from the parts that it didn't. And having no use for the rest of this plant,
Did they
would
burn it off?
Set fire to the leftovers.
My God, yes.
And quickly noticed that breathing in the smoke from these
Feels
massive
good.
hot pyres
Feels really good.
made them feel a little strange.
Oh
What
my
was
God.
that movie that took place in like an English tiny little town, countryside town, where like someone started growing weed and like all of the elderly little conservative tight buttoned up like British citizens like slowly started getting high.
I don't
and
know.
someone tried to
No.
like burn the field and the whole town got high.
This sounds right up my alley as a
It's
British
straight
widow.
up your alley. I'll Google it. I'll figure it out.
All right. So after World War II, marijuana was reclassified as an illegal crop, but the knowledge of how to successfully grow it had obviously remained amongst those farmers who had done so during the war. And then came the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
It's called
Yeah.
Saving Grace.
Mm.
It's a 2000 British comedy film.
Shaving Grace.
She needs to be shaved.
So Vietnam comes along, obviously a generation later.
Mm-hmm.
And Vietnam is known for heavy drug use among American troops, and it introduced many American young men to drugs like marijuana and heroin for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
both of which could be easily obtained on the black market in Vietnam. And, they needed like an escape from
The hell they were
the
living.
hell of war.
Mm-hmm.
So when some of these Vietnam veterans returned home to Kentucky, they realized that their home state, because it sits on the 37th parallel, the same latitude that runs through the Hindu Kush Mountains, where indica cannabis strains originated, provided the perfect conditions for growing marijuana.
Wow.
So they were like, let's fucking do this. There's high unemployment. There's high poverty in our state. We have
High is right.
Oh, yeah. We have a farming background. We're on this parallel. Let's fucking do it.
And as far as they know, the federal government would like promote it at this
Right.
point. Like,
Well, it wasn't at this point because it's the 70s.
Oh, right. It's illegal by then.
oh, okay.
But
But
they.
in the past,
But like their dad's generation.
Yeah.
were
They're familiar
growing
with the
it.
practice.
They weren't
Yeah.
that far removed from the complete acceptance of the federal government.
Basically, their dads had grown it for the government before being told not to, and their grandfathers were bootleggers.
Mm-hmm. So,
And
like,
moonshiners.
they're going to grow weed in a great weed growing area.
Right.
It's in their blood.
Mm-hmm. So, however, unlike in the days of World War II, growing marijuana in Kentucky was now a much more difficult proposition. At first, these upstart weed farmers cut deals with more established, regular, normal farmers, some of which had previously cultivated hemp when that had been legal, but now they'd switched to like corn or whatever the fuck.
Something boring like corn.
Corn, which is big in Minnesota.
Big in Minnesota.
Fucking love corn. The food.
Everybody
Did you
loves
know
corn.
that corn enamel is made from teeth?
Oh, my bathtubs. They grind up teeth and
Yep.
bathtubs.
I just pictured a cob of corn made out of molars.
Oh, I bet
yum.
that exists. So anyway, so when they first started, they went to normal farmers and they were like, "Can we grow some marijuana just like sprinkled in between your corn crops so that
Tuck
we
it
don't
away.
get caught, and we will give you a cut of the sale at the end of the season?" And the farmers were like, "Okay, sure, fine." And then they were able to like hide the pot, and everybody was happy, right? It worked well for a while. The only real problem in the early years was marketing the marijuana once it was grown. So people on the coasts who were used to smoking pot tended to look down on the pot that was initially grown in Kentucky and called it hillbilly pot.
It was probably really good weed, though.
Well, at first it wasn't so good, but only in like the first like 2 or 3 years it was like kind of shit, apparently. Although there was lingering knowledge in the community about how to successfully grow the plant, it had never been grown before with the goal of like providing a pleasurable high. It had been grown for hemp seeds.
Right. So
So
they
they
had to
had-
adjust.
They had to adjust. They had to like tweak it, figure it out.
Fucking West Coast marijuana elitists
Yeah.
have been around for fucking ever.
Right. So they figured it out. They did some experimentation. And with the help of like a really ideal growing climate, soon enough, they had tweaked it enough. They had a really desirable and really high quality marijuana product.
Nice.
But once Kentucky growers grew more skilled at their craft, and as word spread across the country about the quality of this so-called bluegrass,
Kentucky
I see
bluegrass.
what
Love
you
it.
did
Love it. Love it.
the industry inevitably grew, and it was no longer enough to just hide a few plants in some corn crops here and there. They
Can't
needed
keep
to
up.
like scale up.
Mm-hmm.
So out-of-state buyers with deep pockets began ordering in advance, and sometimes they would front like $100,000 to these growers for like seed, fertilizer, planting, transplanting, cultivation, harvesting, security, like the whole shebang. They were like, here's a bunch of money up front, and then I expect like this much by the end of the season.
Right. Wow.
During the harvest season, which lasted for a couple months starting in mid-October, it was not unheard of for large West Coast distributors to turn around a ton of Kentucky marijuana per week.
Like a
literal
literal ton.
A
Yeah.
ton.
Wow.
Oh, a week. Jesus.
That's a lot of fucking pot.
Yeah. So within a couple decades, Kentucky boasted the largest homegrown marijuana syndicate in U.S. history.
Wow.
my God, who knew?
Fun fact.
And as they started to make more and more money and attract more people into the business, it became almost impossible to continue to fly under the radar of Kentucky police. So word started to get out, and the police started to like search out these marijuana farms. One problem was that as the years went on, some of the newer people that became involved in the growing were more violent than the original group of farmers.
That's
And that also kind of like coincided with like the 1980s and cocaine. So some people started being involved in like cocaine sales, even though they weren't growing cocaine.
There's a lot going on.
Or they were just like doing a lot of cocaine, and then they were paranoid, and then they had the money, so they were buying like guns and Corvettes and like the whole fucking thing.
Just kind of merged into one drug trafficking
Mess.
situation.
Right. Whereas like the original core group, they were living in literal cabins that their ancestors had lived in for like 6 generations.
Yeah.
They were driving beat up old trucks that could
Nothing fancy.
right, whatever. And then this younger generation was like, fucking Scarface, whatever, and driving a red Corvette in rural Kentucky. And it was like,
suspicious.
really, bruh?
Mm-hmm.
So some would say that they had to be a little more violent and weaponize themselves because they were now dealing with a new phenomenon called rippers, which is like thieves that would come and steal their shit in the middle of the night from their fields. But still, sometimes the lengths to which they went were a little extreme.
Mm-hmm.
So one man who had a particular reputation for violence was named Garland Russell. Once, when he discovered that someone had been poaching plants from a hidden patch near a river, he assembled a crew and descended on the home of a sharecropping family whom he believed to be the culprits. So he just was like, I know who did that. Let's get them. The men opened fire on the small shack, shooting out the windows and killing the family dog.
No.
If it was Smiley Pete, I'm going to scream.
It wasn't Smiley Pete, but it's still just as tragic.
True. It's sad.
It was Frowny Fran.
Not Frowny Fran. My second favorite dog.
So
Lucy only likes dogs that don't exist.
Smiley Pete existed. There are
Okay,
photos.
I'll give you that.
And a memorial bench.
You're right.
So not content to stop, Garland Russell planned to kill the entire family and had to be restrained by his accomplices who were like, we've sent enough of a message.
Yeah,
You don't
we're
need
good.
to massacre this whole family.
Garland is a lunatic.
Yeah. On another occasion, Russell caught 2 rippers in action stealing plants from one of his patches. He chased the thieves down and beat both of them severely before restraining them with lengths of a logging chain.
Oh.
Jesus.
Oh, that's dark.
It gets worse. He then used the chain to hog tie one of them, and the other one he hung upside down from the ceiling of a nearby abandoned house. And then he doused both of them with gasoline and just like left them for a while.
Holy hell.
Didn't light him on fire.
Didn't light them on fire. I think
left
they
them
survived.
Marinating.
But it was pretty bleak.
Ew.
So, although many other farmers strongly disagreed with these violent tactics, there was a strong code of silence amongst all of them. And it was understood that nobody involved in the ring or even in the wider community of like Marion County or these nearby Kentucky counties, nobody would rat on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like pure
loyalty.
silence.
Yeah.
Even some of the like regular farmers had pretty extreme tactics. So many of them had their fields patrolled by Rottweilers who'd had their vocal cords surgically removed.
Oh, God.
Oh, so they'd just be quiet?
So they would
like sneak up on them?
And then attack?
Yes. Literally, yes. So they wouldn't bark, but they were still trained to attack. And they would
without warning, you'd get mauled by a dog.
A Rottweiler.
Yikes.
That is so
Which
fucking
Rottweilers
sad.
are not inherently dangerous.
No.
Dog species is inherently dangerous. It's all
Of
about
course.
the socialization.
Yeah, they were trained to
do
be
this.
attack dogs.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And also they could like alert if police were coming, but they would alert in like a visual way and not in a barking way, so police wouldn't know that they had been seen and people could get away.
Wow.
Many also would booby trap their marijuana crops by stringing the plants with fish hooks at eye level. So like the people harvesting them knew that they existed so they could take precautions, but like police wouldn't.
Or thieves.
Or
rippers.
They would do dynamite tied to trip wires. Like
I'm never going to get over the
basically
fish
a
hooks.
landmine at that
I'd rather
point.
be blown up than have a fish hook in my eyeball.
And sometimes live rattlesnakes.
Oh,
that's,
good.
That's a good one.
Classic.
That's a fun one.
So at some point, the group of pot farmers in Kentucky began going by the nickname the Cornbread Mafia.
Wow.
Oh, I like that.
It's unclear exactly when this nickname started. The name would not be used in the public until 1989 at a press conference, but it most certainly originated earlier amongst the members themselves. Like they were calling themselves the Cornbread Mafia, and then eventually it became public.
That's hilarious.
Love it when a group gives itself a nickname.
Yeah.
The first time authorities realized marijuana was being grown in Marion County was likely on July 10th, 1973, when a police officer pulled over a car driven by a 26-year-old local man. The officer saw a grocery bag on the floor by the passenger seat and noticed a particular smell coming from it. The officer then
He just
demanded...
ran over a skunk. I don't see what the
Maybe.
big deal is.
No
The officer
probable cause.
then demanded that the driver pop the trunk, which he apparently did, and then the officer found 59 additional paper bags.
Oh, that's a lot of paper bags.
Ran over a lot of skunks. We were skunk collecting.
Each bag, he later estimated, contained enough marijuana to make 100 cigarettes.
Oh,
Amazing.
good
A
estimate.
marijuana cigarette.
Officer.
To do 100 cigarettes of weeds.
Of marijuana.
The devil's lettuce.
The wacky tobacco.
So police in this part of Kentucky already focused a lot of their time and resources on tracking down bootleggers that were still illegally operating. And now they just added tracking down illegal marijuana farms to their list.
Great.
They eventually acquired planes and helicopters so that they could search for marijuana farms from the sky.
Oh my
Yikes.
God.
Because they were so well hidden from the roads and stuff that like from the sky is like the only way they could find them.
And it's so rural. Rural.
Rural. Once they got the planes, though, people were pretty fucked. Like that was
Yeah.
a big game changer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So by this time, the Cornbread Mafia had enough connections and resources that when they felt the authorities were moving in too close, they began moving a large portion of their growing operations to neighboring states. However, they would still transport the product back to Kentucky after processing so that buyers would pay a premium for what they thought was Kentucky bluegrass, even though a lot of it was grown in like Illinois, Minnesota,
Some
Missouri,
crap.
whatever. But it was grown by these Kentucky guys, but it was still grown like all over.
Okay.
Also, there was like funny stories about when one of the guys started a growing operation in like northern Minnesota and how like all of the like local like Scandinavian descendant people had like no fucking clue what was happening. And they like planted corn to hide the marijuana crops.
Yeah.
But they planted the corn late intentionally so that it coincided with like when
The growth.
it coincided with the growth so that the marijuana plants wouldn't be like higher than the corn
Right.
plants.
Sticking
Right.
out like a sore thumb.
And so Sven and Oli were like, what are you doing over there?
Yeah, exactly. Sven and Oli were like,
Oh, a
these
little
guys
late to
don't-
be planting corn. Don't know what you're doing. These assholes are never going to make it.
exactly.
This
Martha,
fella-
make them a hat dish. There's no way they're eating this winter. They're turning their corn so late in the season. What are these yahoos doing over here?
This fellow over here.
This little fella don't know what he's doing.
fucking word for word, exactly, yes. So I just thought that
Marianne, this little fella over here don't know what he's doing. You gotta
bet-
make him some food for the winter.
was, you better make them a hot dish. They're going to starve.
You got any more of those moose slippers? They're gonna
Better
be
make-
starving and frozen by the time January comes.
Better make him a spare for the root cellar.
Well,
He's
take
gonna
one
need
for the
it.
road, but make sure to bring
what
that
if we got
Tupperware back.
pickled?
What do we got in the deep freeze? These little fellas gonna need something to get them through the wintertime.
Oh, something.
They're going to be skin and bones. Anyway.
Well, I sure hope you liked that clip. If you did like that clip, make sure you are subscribing to our YouTube channel, leaving us a nice review, and joining us on Patreon for even more video content, audio content, salacious content all around. Come join us. Treat yourself.